Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, her eyes burning from hours of reading imperial documents. The massive archive contained information about every species that had joined the Galactic Empire over the past 50,000 years. As Earth's chief xenodiplomat, she needed to understand exactly what humanity was getting into. 3 months had passed since the massive Imperial ships appeared in Earth's orbit. Their arrival had changed everything. Humans had finally learned they weren't alone in the universe, but Sarah wasn't sure if that was good news anymore. She rubbed her tired eyes and walked to the window of her Geneva office. Outside, crowds gathered around the partially built Imperial Embassy, a towering structure of gleaming metal that seemed to mock Earth's traditional architecture. Some people in the crowd wore pro-Empire t-shirts, while others held protest signs. No one knew what to think yet. Sarah's computer beeped. Another report had arrived from her team analyzing Imperial culture. With a sigh, she sat back down and opened the file. The more they learned about the Empire, the more worried she became. Dr. Chen, her assistant Thomas, knocked on the door. "The Imperial ambassador wants to meet with you again." "Tell him I'm reviewing their cultural integration protocols," Sarah replied, not looking up from her screen. "He says it's urgent. Something about starting their education program early." Sarah's hand froze above her keyboard. Early? They weren't supposed to begin that for another year. She had seen what Imperial education did to other species. The Empire called it cultural optimization, but Sarah called it brainwashing. Every civilization that joined the Empire ended up the same. Their unique music disappeared, their art changed to match Imperial standards, their languages slowly died out. They became perfect Imperial citizens, but lost everything that made them special. Walking through the UN building to meet the ambassador, Sarah passed the new Imperial information screens. They showed happy aliens living in massive Imperial cities, all wearing the same styles, watching the same entertainment, eating the same food. 3 months ago, these images had seemed wonderful. Now they made her skin crawl. The Imperial ambassador, Texel, waited in the conference room. Like all high-ranking Imperial officials, he had the Empire's perfect look. Tall, gray-skinned, with large eyes and long fingers. Sarah wondered what species he had originally come from before Imperial genetic optimization. "Dr. Chen," Texel said with his usual empty smile, "I bring excellent news. The Imperial Council has approved accelerated cultural integration for Earth. We can begin upgrading your education systems next month." Upgrading. Sarah kept her voice calm, even as alarm bells rang in her head. "We haven't even agreed to join the Empire yet." Tixel's smile didn't change. "Of course you'll join. Every species does. We offer peace, prosperity, and unity. Why would anyone refuse?" Sarah thought about the reports on her desk, about lost languages, forgotten songs, and children who couldn't remember their grandparents' stories. She thought about Earth's 7,000 languages, countless musical styles, and millions of different foods and customs. "We'll need time to review this proposal," she said carefully. "Review?" Texel looked genuinely confused. "But we're offering you perfection. The Empire has spent 50,000 years creating the perfect society. We're giving you a gift." As Sarah walked back to her office, she realized something that scared her. The Empire truly didn't understand why anyone would want to stay different. And things that the Empire didn't understand, it changed, whether the people wanted it or not. She had to warn Earth's leaders. They weren't dealing with just an advanced civilization. They were facing something that could erase everything that made humanity human. Sarah's hands shook as she watched the secret recording. Her contact in the Imperial Embassy had smuggled it to her late last night, and she hadn't slept since viewing it. The hologram showed the cultural integration of a planet called Nexus IV, recorded 50 years ago. The beautiful forest world had been stripped bare. Massive Imperial mining machines crawled across its surface like metal insects. The native Nexians, once famous for living in harmony with their environment, now worked in enormous factories. Their children attended imperial schools, where they learned that their parents' way of life had been primitive and inefficient. This can't be happening here, Sarah whispered to herself, but it already was. She minimized the recording as Thomas rushed into her office. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this." He turned on the news. An imperial cultural guide named Zelra was speaking on Earth's largest news network. "Earth's entertainment is too chaotic," Zelra was saying. "Too many different styles, too much conflict and emotion. We will help streamline it, make it more." She smiled that empty imperial smile. "Perfect." Sarah's phone buzzed. Messages poured in from her team around the world. Imperial representatives were visiting movie studios, music labels, and art galleries. They called them advisory meetings, but Sarah knew better now. She had seen this pattern in the historical records of every world the Empire had absorbed. First came the suggestions, then the helpful regulations. Finally, the complete takeover of all media and art. Within one generation, every species forgot their own stories and sang only imperial songs. "Thomas, get me everything we have on imperial resource extraction," Sarah ordered. She had noticed something strange in the Nexus IV recording, something about the way the Empire stripped planets of resources. Hours later, her suspicions were confirmed. Every world that joined the Empire followed the same pattern. First came cultural change. Then, while people were distracted by their modernizing society, the Empire's machines moved in. They didn't just take valuable minerals, they harvested everything, leaving worlds dependent on imperial supplies. Sarah's computer chimed. A new message from the Imperial Embassy announced the opening of the first Imperial Youth Center in New York. The message included images of smiling children learning about superior imperial technology and culture. She checked the time, 3 a.m. Too late to call Earth's leaders, but this couldn't wait. She began typing an urgent report. "The Empire's integration isn't just cultural," she wrote. "It's a complete takeover strategy. They don't just change how species think, they make them completely dependent on imperial resources." Her office door opened. Tixel stood there, his gray skin ghostly in the dim light. "Working late, Dr. Chen?" he asked softly, so dedicated to understanding our ways. Sarah quickly closed her files, just reviewing some cultural documents. Tixel glided into the room. "We noticed you accessed restricted historical files. Files about Nexus IV." His smile remained, but his eyes hardened. Those files were not meant for Earth's current clearance level. "I was curious about imperial mining practices," Sarah said carefully. "Earth has its own mining industry. We want to learn from your expertise." "Of course." Texel placed a data chip on her desk. "Here are the approved files about imperial resource management, much more suitable for your current development stage." After he left, Sarah stared at the chip. The Empire was trying to control even what they could learn about their future. She opened a secure channel to Earth's Security Council. They needed to know the truth, not just about the cultural destruction, but about the Empire's real plans for Earth. The fate of their planet, their resources, and their children's futures hung in the balance. And time was running out. The streets of Tokyo erupted in chaos as thousands marched past the newly built Imperial Education Center. "Keep Earth free," they shouted, waving signs in dozens of languages. Similar protests were happening in New York, London, Mumbai, and hundreds of other cities across the planet. Sarah watched the global news feeds from her office, her heart racing. The Empire's announcement about taking control of Earth's schools had finally pushed people too far. Parents didn't want their children learning only Imperial-approved history and culture. "Dr. Chen," Thomas rushed in. "The Imperial Ambassador is demanding you control these protests. He says they're disrupting the Empire's integration schedule." Sarah almost laughed. The Empire still didn't understand humans. They couldn't just schedule when people would give up their freedom. Her phone lit up with a message from Maria Patel, her friend who taught at an elementary school in Chicago. The Imperial Educational Advisors had arrived that morning, carrying new textbooks and teaching materials. They want us to stop teaching about Earth's different cultures, Maria's message read. They say it promotes divisive thinking. When I refused, they said I'd be replaced with an Imperial instructor next week. Sarah's hands tightened into fists. She remembered the recordings from other worlds, how the Empire had slowly replaced all teachers with their own people. Within one generation, children forgot their own history. The door burst open. Tixel stormed in, his usually perfect Imperial composure cracking. "This resistance is unacceptable," he snapped. "No species has ever rejected Imperial education. It is a gift." "A gift we didn't ask for," Sarah replied calmly. "Earth's people want to keep their own schools, their own stories, their own ways of teaching." "Primitive methods," Tixel sneered. "Your species teaches too much creativity, too much independent thinking. It is inefficient." Before Sarah could respond, her screens lit up with breaking news. In Beijing, parents had formed a human chain around their children's school, blocking Imperial instructors from entering. In Brazil, teachers were holding classes in parks and homes, refusing to use Imperial materials. African nations had just announced a complete ban on Imperial educational programs. Tixel's face twisted as he watched. "This defiance will be remembered," he warned. "The Empire has ways of dealing with difficult species." After he left, Sarah received an urgent message from Earth's Security Council. The Empire had just announced trade sanctions against Earth. No more advanced technology, no more medical supplies, no more access to their faster-than-light travel network. They expected Earth to surrender quickly, just like every other species before them. But they had miscalculated. Within hours, governments around the world announced their response. China and India revealed they had already reverse-engineered several pieces of Imperial technology. The European Union had secretly stockpiled medical supplies. African nations shared breakthrough research on growing food more efficiently. Earth had been preparing. Sarah smiled as she read report after report of humans working together, sharing resources and knowledge. The Empire had made a crucial mistake. They thought humanity's differences made them weak. They didn't understand that these differences, these varied ways of thinking and solving problems, were actually their greatest strength. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video from Maria's school. The children had organized their own protest, singing songs in different languages, sharing stories from their various cultures. They held hands in a circle around their school, a living symbol of unity and diversity. Sarah forwarded the video to Earth's leaders with a note. "This is what we're fighting for. Not just our present, but our children's right to remain human." As night fell, the protests continued worldwide. The Empire's threats had done something unprecedented. They had united humanity not in fear, but in determination. Earth would not surrender its soul without a fight. Sarah stood in the underground laboratory beneath Geneva, watching in amazement as scientists from 20 different nations worked together. Just 6 months ago, these countries had been rivals. Now they shared a common goal: survival. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called Dr. Zhao, a quantum physicist from China. He pointed to a holographic display showing an Imperial shuttle's engine design. "We've figured out how their faster-than-light drives work. It's actually simpler than they made us believe." The Empire's sanctions had been in place for 3 weeks. They had expected Earth to beg for mercy within days. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Humans got creative. "Look at this," said Dr. Rodriguez, holding up a medical scanner. "We reverse-engineered it from the one they gave us. But we made it better. Ours uses less power and shows more detail." Sarah's phone buzzed. Another message from Tixel. She ignored it, just like she'd ignored his last 20 messages. The Imperial ambassador couldn't understand why his threats weren't working. "Dr. Chen." Thomas rushed into the lab, tablet in hand. "You won't believe what's happening in Kenya." The screen showed footage from an African research center. They had taken imperial farming technology and combined it with traditional agricultural methods. The result? Crops that grew 5 times faster than imperial standards, using half the resources. This is impossible. Tixel's voice came from behind them. Everyone turned to see the imperial ambassador standing in the doorway, his gray face darker than usual with anger. Your species cannot advance this quickly. It defies all imperial models. Maybe your models are wrong, Sarah replied calmly. Humans don't just copy technology. We improve it. We see things differently because we're all different. Inefficient, Tixel snapped. Progress requires uniformity. The Empire has proven this for 50,000 years. A scientist from India stepped forward. That's your problem, she said. You've thought the same way for 50,000 years. We think of new ways every day. Warning alarms suddenly blared through the facility. Sarah rushed to the main screen. Imperial warships had appeared in orbit, more than ever before. This is your last warning, Tixel announced. Accept Imperial guidance, or face the consequences. The screen lit up again. This time, it showed responses from around the world. Japan unveiled energy shields reversed engineered from Imperial designs. Brazil revealed weapons systems that could match Imperial technology. Australia demonstrated new communication networks that the Empire couldn't block. But most impressive was what happened next. Regular people from every country began sharing their own innovations. A teenager in Nigeria had found a way to improve Imperial computer codes. A grandmother in Thailand had discovered how to enhance Imperial food production methods. A group of children in Canada had figured out how to make Imperial translation devices work better. Tixel watched in silence, his perfect Imperial composure crumbling. This is not possible, he whispered. Your species was primitive just months ago. No, Sarah corrected him. We weren't primitive. We were diverse. Every human thinks differently, dreams differently, solves problems differently. That's not our weakness. It's our strength. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Earth's leaders. In response to the Imperial warships, every nation had just signed the Unity Accord. For the first time in human history, Earth would speak with one voice. But it would still sing with many voices, paint with many colors, and think with many minds. Tixel stormed out, but Sarah barely noticed. She was too busy watching humanity prove what she had always believed, that their differences made them stronger, not weaker. The Empire had tried to force them to change, but instead, they had changed the rules of the game. The turning point had arrived, and humanity was ready. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her microscope in horror. The results were unmistakable. She checked them 5 times already, but they always showed the same thing. Dr. Patel, please tell me you're seeing something different, she said to her colleague in the medical wing of the underground facility. Dr. Maya Patel looked up from her own microscope, her face pale. No, the DNA samples from all Imperial citizens show the exact same pattern. They're not just culturally identical, they're becoming biologically identical too. They had discovered this by accident. While studying Imperial medical technology, they found something strange in the health upgrades the Empire offered to all new member species. These weren't just normal medicines, they changed people at their genetic level. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the historical records. Species that joined the Empire didn't just lose their cultures. Within 3 generations, they began to look different. Their children were born looking more imperial with each passing year. Dr. Chen. Thomas burst into the lab. You need to see the news right now. On the main screen, Tixel was making an announcement from the Imperial Embassy. As a gesture of goodwill, the Empire will provide free medical upgrades to all of Earth's children. These treatments will begin next week. Sarah felt sick. Now she understood why the Empire seemed so patient despite Earth's resistance. They didn't need to force humanity to change. They just needed to wait. Get me the Security Council, she ordered Thomas. Right now. Within an hour, Sarah stood before Earth's leaders in an emergency meeting. The room fell silent as she showed them the evidence. The Empire doesn't just want to change how we think, she explained. They want to change what we are. Their medical upgrades will slowly turn humans into their version of the perfect species. She showed them pictures of other species before and after joining the Empire. The changes were subtle at first, slightly gray skin, larger eyes, longer fingers, but by the third generation, everyone looked imperial. This is why they've never failed to assimilate a species, Sarah continued. Even if some people resist their cultural changes, their children and grandchildren literally become imperial, one small genetic change at a time. The room erupted in angry shouts and discussions. Sarah waited until they quieted down before delivering the worst news. The Empire has already started, she said softly. They've been putting these genetic modifiers in the air filters of every imperial building on Earth. Anyone who spent time in their facilities has been exposed. The president of the African Union stood up. How many people have been affected? The changes are minimal so far, Dr. Patil answered. But if we don't act now, it will be too late. Suddenly, all phones in the room buzzed at once. Imperial ships had begun landing at major cities worldwide, carrying what they called medical aid teams. But now Earth knew what that really meant. The Chinese premier spoke first. We cannot let them near our children. For once, every leader in the room agreed. They had fought to protect Earth's cultures, its independence, and its technology. But this was different. This was about protecting humanity itself. Sarah watched as the world's leaders drafted an emergency order. All imperial facilities would be closed immediately. Their air filtration systems would be destroyed. No one would be allowed inside until they were cleaned. They'll see this as an act of war, someone warned. No, Sarah said firmly. This is an act of survival. As she left the meeting, Sarah looked at a photo on her phone. Her niece's kindergarten class, 20 children with different faces, different colors, different smiles. She would not let the Empire erase that diversity. The time for polite resistance was over. Earth needed to take a stand, not just for their freedom, but for their very existence as humans. The United Nations Assembly Hall had never been so crowded. Representatives from every nation on Earth packed the room. Sarah sat in the front row, her heart pounding as she waited for the most important announcement in human history. 5 hours ago, Earth's leaders had made their final decision. Now, they would tell the Empire. Tixel stood at the podium first, unaware of what was coming. The Empire is concerned by Earth's recent actions, he said smoothly. Closing our facilities was most unwise. But we are merciful. Accept our guidance now, and all will be forgiven. The Secretary General of the UN stepped forward. Her voice was firm as she spoke into the microphone. We have prepared our response to the Empire. She held up a document. This is the Terra Proclamation. As of today, the Galactic Empire is banned from Earth and its entire solar system. Tixel's perfect composure cracked. For the first time, he showed genuine shock. Banned? You cannot ban the Empire. No species has ever. We just did, the Secretary General cut him off. Your ships will leave our space. Your facilities will be dismantled. Your medical programs will end. Screens around the hall lit up, showing Imperial ships across Earth being surrounded by new human defense vessels. The technology that Earth had reverse-engineered and improved was now protecting their planet. This is impossible, Tixel sputtered. You are a primitive species. You cannot. We tracked the genetic changes you tried to make to our people. Sarah stood up, facing him. We found the hidden programs in your educational materials. We discovered your plans to strip our planet once we were fully integrated. The hall erupted in angry shouts. Parents held up pictures of their children. Children the Empire had tried to secretly change. Scientists displayed evidence of the Empire's hidden genetic programs. Tixel's gray skin turned almost white. The Empire does not accept rejection. We offer perfection, unity, peace. No, Sarah replied. You offer extinction. You destroy everything unique about a species until nothing remains but your perfect copy. The Secretary General raised her hand for silence. We are not asking permission, Ambassador Tixel. We are telling you. Earth is now a closed system to the Empire. Any Imperial vessel entering our space will be treated as hostile. You would choose chaos over order? Tixel asked in disbelief. Choose primitive diversity over imperial perfection. Yes, came the simple answer. We choose to remain human. Suddenly, the main screen lit up with a transmission from Lunar Base. Imperial warships were appearing near Mars. Earth's defenders moved to intercept them. But something unexpected happened. When Earth's ships revealed their new weapons, improved versions of Imperial technology, the Empire's fleet stopped. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Empire faced a species that could match their power. A species that had taken their technology and made it better. All because humans thought differently, worked differently, created differently. Tixel received a message from his superiors. His hands shook as he read it. The Empire. The Empire offers Earth special status, exemption from standard integration protocols. You may keep some of your primitive ways. All of our ways, the Secretary General corrected him. Earth remains free, or not part of the Empire at all. Sarah watched as Tixel's perfect imperial facade finally shattered completely. The Empire had never faced rejection before. They had never failed to absorb a species. Until now. As Tixel left the hall in defeat, Sarah looked around at the faces of Earth's people. Different colors, different shapes, different expressions, all united not in sameness, but in their commitment to remaining different. Earth had not just resisted the Empire. They had done the impossible. They had said no to perfection, choosing instead to remain beautifully, powerfully human. 1 month after the Terra Proclamation, Sarah stood at her office window watching workers dismantle the last Imperial building in Geneva. The gray metal structure that had once dominated the skyline was coming down piece by piece, making way for a new Earth Defense Command Center. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It wasn't from Tixel this time. He had left Earth 2 weeks ago. Instead, it was from someone unexpected. A resistance leader from the Nexian species. Your broadcast reached us, the message read. For the first time in generations, we remember who we were. Some of our young are asking questions about their original culture. How did you resist? Similar messages had been pouring in from across the galaxy. Earth's stand against the Empire had sparked something no one expected. Hope. Dr. Chen. Thomas entered with an excited look. The first test of our new space drive was successful. It's 30% faster than the Imperial version. Sarah smiled. Humanity hadn't just preserved their independence. They were advancing beyond what the Empire thought possible. New inventions emerged daily, created by people thinking in their own unique ways rather than following Imperial patterns. Her phone buzzed. The Security Council needed her for an emergency meeting. Sarah grabbed her coat, hurrying to the underground chamber where Earth's leaders gathered. The room's main screen showed an Imperial diplomatic vessel requesting permission to enter Earth's space. But this wasn't an ordinary Imperial ship. It carried representatives from 10 different Empire species who wanted to learn about Earth's alternative path. They're calling us the exception, the Secretary General explained. The species that proved the Empire wrong. Some of their younger citizens are beginning to question Imperial uniformity. Sarah studied the ship's credentials. This could be a trick, she warned. The Empire doesn't give up easily. No, agreed the Chinese premier. But neither do we. After careful discussion, Earth made its decision. The ship would be allowed to land, but at a space station, not on Earth itself. The visitors would see that freedom didn't mean chaos, that progress didn't require erasing identity. Later that day, Sarah addressed a graduating class at the New Earth Defense Academy. Young faces looked up at her, different colors, different features, all shining with the same determination. The Empire thought our differences made us weak, she told them. They were wrong. Our differences let us see problems from many angles, find solutions others miss, create things they never imagined. She showed them pictures from around the world. Japanese scientists combining ancient meditation techniques with new spaceflight systems. African engineers using traditional building methods to improve colony designs. Children in Brazil creating art that blended Earth cultures with space exploration themes. We didn't just save our humanity, Sarah continued. We proved it's our greatest strength. And now, others are beginning to see it too. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from a young imperial citizen. How do we remember who we were? Can you teach us to be different again? Sarah looked at the eager faces before her. Earth's next generation wouldn't have to fight to stay human. They would show the galaxy how to embrace diversity again. Outside, the sun set on the dismantled Imperial Embassy. Tomorrow, construction would begin on a new building, the Galaxy Cultural Exchange Center, not to make everyone the same, but to celebrate how everyone was different. The Empire had offered humanity perfection. Instead, humanity had shown the galaxy something better, the power of being perfectly imperfect, wonderfully diverse, and proudly unique. As Sarah walked home under the stars, she smiled at a group of children playing in a park. They were singing songs in different languages, their voices blending in beautiful chaos. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not uniformity, but harmony. Not perfection, but possibility. The Empire had wanted to change humanity. Instead, humanity was changing the Empire, one questioning mind at a time.